Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We're in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 14, verses 24 through 45. Now, the first paragraph explains it all. Saul puts all his army under distress because he binds them to a curse, a vow, that they're not supposed to eat until he has been avenged, not that the Lord has been avenged. And a number of things. First, Jesus told us, don't make oaths, don't make vows. Let your yes be yes and your no be no's. And this is a prime example, again, why you don't do that. The other thing is that Saul operates out of the law. This whole idea of cursing people, as opposed to Jonathan, who asked, Lord, is it your will to do something? And he's operating out of faith. Saul's not operating out of faith. He's operating out of what he can do, what he can control. It's the law. Now, we're told that as the entire army is going through woods, there's so many bees, there's honey everywhere, and Jonathan takes his staff and stabs it into a honeycomb and eats it, and his eyes brighten because he's no longer famished. Now, Napoleon said an army marches on its stomach. And these guys, they're exhausted, they've already been fighting, and they're famished. And yet, Saul pushes them forward. And what's interesting is we get to verse 29, and Jonathan criticizes his father's leadership, which is indicative of what's going to follow later. Saul just isn't the leader that Israel really, really needs, but he is the leader that God has given him for this time. Now, he says, if only the men ate what they had plundered, and so after they whip up on the Philistines, they pounce on the plunder of sheep and cows, and they butcher them, and they're eating them with blood in them. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's just horrible. The thing is, it takes a long time to drain a carcass of the blood, and so that it's like that. They just don't realize it. And so he says, let's go ahead and we'll have a ceremonial butchering instead. Again, Saul's going through all these motions of religion, of rituals, but not faith. And so Saul builds this altar, and then he says, let's inquire of the Lord, but there's no answer. And so Saul says, well, why aren't we getting an answer? Who's at fault? And immediately he throws his people under the bus. Must be their fault. Let's throw the dice between the army and between me and Jonathan. He thinks, oh, this is going to be an easy one. Then it comes back to him and Jonathan. They throw the dice again. It's Jonathan. And he has made a vow that anyone who broke his command, his vow, would be put to death. And Jonathan said, I guess I'm going to be put to death. And Saul says, I'm not going to go to sleep until I put somebody to death. And it's the Israelites that he was willing to throw into the bus and say, you're crazy. We're not going to let you kill Jonathan. He's a great leader for us. And so Saul relents. But Saul's pride continues to cause these obstacles, these brokenness. He acts rash, which brings up the question, why Saul? You think about how heroic Jonathan is. Even though he's heroic, he seems to be a great leader. He will never be king because Saul has already had that promise of a kingdom taken away from him by the Lord. And so why is Saul the king for 42 years? Is because Saul is serving God's purpose for that time, even though God has already determined he's not going to go any farther. And so Saul fought off Israel's enemies and protected them for those years. But the next king isn't ready yet. The next king is coming, but he's not quite ready yet. Well, thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.